Friends, I'm standing in the very room in which Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was put on trial in 1922, in March 1922. This is what is known as the Great Trial. This room now is in a very dilapidated state, as can be seen. Again, another illustration of the fact that no one is at all attentive to the heritage of Mahatma Gandhi, notwithstanding everything that is said about Gandhi, who is the father of the nation and supposedly the greatest cultural asset to this country. This room is located in what is now known as the Old Circuit House. This was not a courtroom back then either. It was converted into a courtroom for the purpose of the trial. And there is some speculation as to why the trial was held here rather than in an official court. The reason may have been that in 1919, when Gandhi had launched a satyagraha against the Rowlatt Act, what is known as a Rowlatt Satyagraha, Ahmedabad was one of the places where there was some political disturbance. And so it's possible that the government might have feared that there would be some disturbance after the trial and perhaps shifted it to the circuit house in the hope that it would attract less attention. Now, this is an extraordinary place. Perhaps to a Gandhi bhakt like myself, every place associated with Gandhi is really extraordinary, but this place really is, because this trial is, I think it can safely be said, one of the most unusual trials in the annals of political history around the world. I dare say that no such trial has ever been held in the world. And we do have the complete transcript of the trial. We have a very good sense of what happened because it's only a little over 100 years ago, and there were ample number of witnesses. Now, to understand this trial, and this video is going to be in two parts, so in this first half, I'm going to briefly describe the political situation leading to Gandhi's arrest, and then in the second short video, I'm going to go over what happened at the trial, and all of that will be from memory as well because I don't have the written transcript of the trial in front of me. It's something on which I have written an article that I wrote in Open Magazine, published in March 2022 on the 100th anniversary of the trial. And of course, I have had occasion to lecture on this in my course on Gandhi and elsewhere as well. Now, let me venture into a brief description of the political history of India from 1919 to 1922. So, 1918 saw the end of the war. The expectation on the part of Indians was that the government would take various measures to not simply ameliorate the distress that an increasingly large number of Indians were facing, particularly the kind of hardship, economic hardship that had been imposed on many of them at the end of World War I. In 1917, there had been the famous Montague Declaration, which had essentially promised Indians a greater share in self-governance and had suggested that there was a road to self-determination ahead. So naturally, the expectation of Indians was that there would be actually political relief and economic relief. And to the contrary, at the end of the war, the government decided to unleash greater repression. What is known as the Rowlatt Acts were passed. We won't get into the entire history of the Rowlatt Acts and the Rowlatt Satyagraha, but essentially the Rowlatt, named after Justice Rowlatt, the Rowlatt legislation would have curtailed the civil liberties of Indians, would have made it much easier for the British to arrest Indians for unlimited periods of time without bringing them to court for trial. And so Gandhi now is going to use this occasion to really launch himself onto the national scene, because he had returned from South Africa in 1915. He had set himself up in Kochram Ashram, followed by Sabarmati Ashram, which is where Gandhi was living, of course, in 1919. And he was really looking for an occasion, if we can put it this way, to launch himself on the national scene. There had been the Champaran Satyagraha before that, of course. That had brought him some amount of visibility. And what Gandhi is going to do is he's going to initiate the Rowlatt Satyagraha, which is going to be essentially a national day of fasting and praying, and it's going to be observed widely around the country. Following that, Gandhi initiated what is known as a non-cooperation movement. And this non-cooperation movement, launched in 1920, would last until February 1922, when Gandhi decided to suspend this movement. Before we get to the reasons why Gandhi decided to suspend the movement and the trial that would take place subsequent to the suspension of the non-cooperation movement, it's essential to just say a few things about the non-cooperation movement. The movement is precisely what the terms non-cooperation suggests. That Gandhi's argument was that the British are able to rule India. They've been able to make their presence felt in this country for 150 years because we, Indians, essentially cooperate with the British. We have enabled them to rule this country. So when he calls for non-cooperation, what he meant was that the Indians were going to withdraw cooperation from the British in all spheres of life. That students were ceased going to British schools, British run colleges. Civil servants would, where possible, abandon their jobs. Right? And of course, another essential part of the non-cooperation movement, we can also think of the relationship between this and the Swadeshi movement. Here I'm thinking, of course, of the 1905 Swadeshi movement in Bengal, which had its origins in very different circumstances, including the partition of Bengal, but there was some overlap between the elements of the Swadeshi movement and the non-cooperation movement, and part of the non-cooperation movement entailed Swadeshi, that is self-reliance. So it is also meant the boycott of British goods and textiles and institutions. Right? Now, in 1922, in this small, dusty market town by the name of Chauri Chaura, which is in the Gorakhpur district of what was then the United Provinces, a political event happened which shook Gandhi to the core and led him to the decision that he was going to suspend the movement. Now, Gandhi himself was not in Chauri Chaura when this incident took place. He himself was in Bardoli, which is not that far, of course, from Ahmedabad. It's about 250 or 300 some odd kilometers south of Ahmedabad, to the southeast of Dandi, where a no-tax campaign was being held. Gandhi was at Bardoli, he was organizing that. Right? When the news came to him of what had happened in Chauri Chaura, where Indians had been taking a procession through this market town, there is an altercation that happens with the police. There's a kind of a provocation. What they're going to do, what this large crowd, what of course the British described as a mob, Gandhi himself used that same language. What this crowd did was it pursued these policemen back into the police station from which they had emerged, and they locked the police station from outside. They set fire to this police station, and then when some of these policemen tried to break their way out of there, they're hacked to pieces. So 21 or 22 policemen died, and Gandhi says that this brought home to him the awareness that Indians were not yet practiced the principal use of ahimsa, of nonviolence, that India was a long way from achieving an understanding from nonviolence. And of course, he was not ready to wage a fight for self-determination unless this fight for self-determination could be based on the principles of Satya and Ahimsa. And this is what led Gandhi to unilaterally call for a suspension of the non-cooperation movement, which provoked a huge outcry, even among his friends and supporters and leading Indian political activists and politicians who were members of the Indian National Congress, members of the All India Congress Committee, who thought that Gandhi had taken a step, number one, which was taken without consultation with the Congress, and number two, he had taken a step which was quite unnecessary because the outbreak of violence in one part of the country, particularly a small dusty town, did not indicate to them that the rest of India was not ready to wage this war or this battle for self-determination through the use of non-violence. Gandhi, on the other hand, was absolutely certain that what had transpired here was a signal, a sign that Indians would have to prepare themselves through sacrifice, through the pursuit of truth, through the practice of non-violence, to be able to wage a satyagraha based on the principles for which he stood. Right? So that's the situation in February 1922, following the incident at Chauri Chaura, when Gandhi decided to suspend the non-cooperation movement. And the government's view then was that now Gandhi is on the back foot. This is the time to actually arrest him and put him on trial on charges of sedition. And this is what I'm going to speak about in the second part of this video.